Um, get my game face on here. All right. So welcome to Teaching via Zoom. And I don't think there's any teacher right now who is not familiar with at least some form of teaching remotely at this point. You know, we're from our pandemic emergency remote teaching to our planned return to school. There's been some element that's remote. And whether we've dipped our toe in a little bit just to do some things, or whether we get really fancy with it, there's Zoom is very flexible for that reason. So my name is Heather Askea, and I teach at the Center for Teaching Excellence at the University of Virginia's College at Wise. And we use Zoom in our classes. We've used Zoom for our training. We use Zoom for our daily meetings. We are actually, if you can see, I'm actually at home, and I have been for several months now, and will continue to be at home for at least the next few months. And so we're doing everything, all of our team meetings, all of our office meetings, all of my trainings, everything's done through Zoom. So we've been able to use a lot of different features, but I've also been able to work with teachers and set in on some sessions where they're using it in a lot of creative ways. So I want to show you some things today about how to use Zoom. If you're not familiar, what is Zoom? Zoom is an online conferencing platform, so it allows you to do two-way video communications. In the way that we're doing it in this setup, it's also a webinar platform so that you can have lots of people in listening to a speaker and interacting with the speaker through a chat feature. The traditional Zoom room is just a room where you have the two-way video communications from your speakers and from your students. So if you're doing this for large groups, you could do, I think, up to 100 in the Zoom, regular Zoom room. But most teachers use this for their classroom presentations. So they're going to have about maybe 25 or 30 students in there at a time, and sometimes a little less or a little more. But it's also just really flexible in terms of what you can do because in the Zoom room. So some things that we can use that typically Zoom is used for, again, there's virtual class meetings, but you can schedule small group instruction within Zoom, and you can do one-on-one tutoring, and you can also use Zoom as a way to capture videos. So if you are maybe trying to do a quick video, turn that Zoom room on and you can press record and it will record to the cloud that you can put right into your Google Classroom, or you can put it right into your LMS, whatever the case should be. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you use it. So we're gonna talk about it a little bit, some ways to engage your students and what Zoom can do for you. So when you're talking about, I'm gonna actually go out of my presentation. I'm gonna go back here because I want to show you how to set up a Zoom class, how to set up a Zoom meeting. So I'm gonna go back to my. Actually, I'm going to go back to Zoom and I'm going to share my screen. This time I'm going to share it so that you can see here. So if I go to my Zoom here, I'm going to sign in. And one of the great things about Zoom is it allows you to sign in with your school credentials. So if you've got your school account, you can sign in very easily with your Google account or whatever. And you can see your meetings here. So anything that you've got scheduled, that you can have that scheduled and have that available for you right there on your timeline when you log in. Then you can schedule a meeting really simply. So hitting that schedule a meeting. And there's some things you can think about as far as security, as far as just logistical type information, giving it a topic, a name, so it's not just class meeting. You may want to say the date, or class meeting and the date, or something that's going to be something that you're going to be able to pick out really easily to see. You'll also notice here that because I'm using the Chrome browser, there actually is a Chrome plugin for Zoom so that you can actually add it up here to your Chrome extensions, and it's a one click, and you can start a meeting with one click. So for those on the fly meetings that to do a one-to-one tutoring session, or a student who doesn't understand, you need to do a little have a little one-to-one help time with them, then you can do that. You can add that the Chrome extension. So I'm going to create a meeting here today. Let's see. Let's see. You can give it a description if you want. That's not mandatory. So then you come here and you can see here. Actually, we'll do tomorrow's. We'll be proactive. We'll do tomorrow's meeting. So here it's asking you, when do you want to do it? Okay, we're going to do it tomorrow. At what time? So let's see. Hey, we'll do it tomorrow at 2 p.m. And then you set the duration time. Now you're not limited. If you go over the hour, it's not going to cut it off or anything. But I always try to limit any Zoom contact to between 30 minutes to an hour, just because it's hard for little kids to sit that long. It's hard for big kids to sit that long, and even adults. So I always try to limit it if possible to 1 hour. But if you go over, it's not going to cut it off. There's not going to be like anything that's going to tell you, oh, you've got 3 minutes, and it's going to shut it down. So no problems there. So I've got 1 hour here. And it usually defaults to whatever time zone that your computer is listed. You can also set this if it's going to be a recurring meeting. So recurring meetings allow you to do weekly meetings. This is how I do my weekly check-in with my office. So we have a Wednesday at 10 a.m. meeting. That's actually a 2-hour meeting. So we violate that 1 hour rule, but it's needed. And we have it where we're going to occur. We have it set to where it's weekly, but you can do this a monthly meeting. You could do a daily meeting, so that you're not having to go in and set up meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And so you can set up one recurring meeting. And in that case, you might want to change your topic and just say it's going to be class meeting, and then then you can change it in your description. If that's the case, if you're going to do it in a recurring meeting. So we'll do it here. We'll do it weekly. And how do you want to repeat every week or every 2 weeks? So here we got some different things every 2 weeks, every week. What day does it occur on? Well, this is the date we start on is on a Wednesday, so we'll go ahead and keep with that. And then you can set the end date. So you can set at the end of the semester. You can set after so many weeks of instruction. So if this is a check-in for maybe a group project that's going to be ongoing for like a month, we could do a weekly or a daily check-in after so many weeks or have so many occurrences. So it's up to you however you want this to look. You can require registration. Registration just means that when they click on a link, it's going to ask them for their information. For my students, I don't typically do this, but if I'm doing this for a professional development or something with public, sometimes we'll do that. That way I can get some information so I can follow up with my attendees afterwards, maybe send out some informational links. Probably it's very akin to the registration that you did to get into this webinar in the first place. You can require some security measures here. So a passcode will generate a passcode for you, and you can change that to something that maybe the students would know. I don't typically do a passcode because I give them the link directly and don't publish it anywhere outside of our protected LMS. But if there's a question or if there's worry about security, early on in the pandemic, Zoom was hit with some unwelcomed guests to some teachers' classrooms. It was called Zoom bombing, I think is what they referred to it as, where you would have some very unwanted, unsavory people who would get into students' classrooms. And so they instituted more measures for authentication. One of the things I always require my students to do is if they're not using their school login or their Zoom login that lists their first and last name, I require them to log in as a guest and put that information in or provide me with that information, because I want to make sure that I count them as present when they're in my classroom. So that way I know who's coming in, who it is. So you can require a passcode if you wish. I don't typically, but you can. And again, I work with mostly adult learners, so I don't really worry about this as much as I would if I was teaching small children, with smaller children. But you can also enable a waiting room. And a waiting room I do like this feature because for one of two reasons. The waiting room doesn't allow someone to come in until you allow them in. It's a little bit hectic because if kids go, if internet connections are a little unstable, you may have kids in the waiting room that will pop up during your session, and you're constantly kind of admitting them to the waiting room. But it also keeps you from inadvertently letting someone in that doesn't need to be there. But the waiting room also serves a great feature where you can, if you're doing like I do office hours, open office hours sometimes once a week in the evenings, and it allows me to have one person at a time in my room. I have the same room. I don't have to set up multiple rooms for each individual person who's coming to see me. I can have a open room that they come in and they sit in the waiting room until I'm ready for them to come in. And for, for the most part, though, I let them in multiples at a time. But sometimes if I'm dealing with a sensitive subject or someone who's maybe a little bit nervous about what they're asking me and doesn't really want to share their concerns with the class, I can have that one-on-one time, but not having to set up multiple individual meetings. So the waiting room can be helpful for that as well. Now you can also you have some options about how you set up your video. So you have your host is on. Do you want your participants to have their video on? Now in a regular Zoom room, you have the option to have everybody be on video, and it's encouraged for participation. Now, there's been some debate on whether we should, require students to have their cameras on or not. Some of the cons for that is some students aren't comfortable in their home environments. They may not have they may have an environment that's not as presentable or as fancy as others, so they may not be as apt or as willing to show themselves on camera. And so the thought is on that is to not require students to show their camera, to turn their camera on, but it's encouraged. So depending on what your philosophy is, I'll just say go with that, or what your school policy is, whether they're required or not. You can have them all start as on, and then they can opt to turn them off, or you can have them all off to start with, and they can turn them on. That's up to you how you want that to be able to be functioning. So I typically go host on, participant on, and that way everything is on when they come in. You also have the ability to choose the type of audio that you'd like. So I typically only use computer audio, but again, you do have the ability to have people phone in, and depending on your students and their connectivity, sometimes the phone may be the only option that they can actually can participate in. And there's a couple of ways you can use the telephone option where they phone in, and they can use other apps like Nearpod to be able to do everything along with you in class. They just can't see you. That's the only difference there. But with the computer audio rather, then they have to be logged into the computer to be able to access and hear you. Now you can enable both. There's no additional costs as far as depending on your plan. I'm not sure in the free version. The free version may be audio only, but I have the first level premium education pack, and there's no additional cost to that from inside the country rather. All right, so thinking about meeting options, so there is a couple of little things that you can kind of customize here, allowing participants to join anytime. They can do that anytime. I don't really have any I've never noticed that there's any problems with this, allowing them to join anytime. I do use the mute participants on entry just because you don't know what's going on in the background, and people aren't always aware that someone's on a call or on a webinar, and so you may get someone yelling from the other room, do you want dinner, or do you want, that kind of thing. I've actually had a student that was putting the other parent, their spouse was putting their children to bed, and obviously the children didn't want to go to bed, so we got to hear that one. So being able to mute and know who's to mute is really difficult at first. So I always start everybody off muted. That way, when they all come in, everybody's muted, and they can opt to turn their microphone on when they're ready. So you do get a few of those that start talking, and then you have to say, "I'm sorry, you're muted," which I was telling Penny before we started. This was probably the quote of the year is going to be, "You're on mute," from all the meetings and things that we've done over this year. But muting participants upon entry gives you some control that you don't really have otherwise in Zoom. It's one of the only things that I really wish Zoom did is in comparison to some of the other tools that I've used for this. I used to be able to have in Adobe Connect, for instance, the ability to turn everybody's microphone off at one time. So if I was hearing a lot of feedback or a lot of noise, I could quickly hit everybody's off. Zoom doesn't have that ability, but you don't have the feedback that you typically have in other systems. So there is a trade-off there. But again, you do have the ability to mute everybody upon entry, so it kind of cuts back on some of that noise. You can require authentication. That can be through your LMS. I don't require that typically because I have students from all different um, uh, divisions and all different using all different logins. So I don't require authentication, but you can, especially if I was using this for students in K-12 that are all going to be on the same domain. That might be a good thing to do. You can see here the breakout room is you can do a breakout room pre-assign. And so what you can do is you can actually upload your student list and you can create rooms from that. So the breakout room is just what it is. It allows you to put students in small groups. So if I start in a large group, then I can break them down into small groups for them to have maybe discussion groups. And so this kind of mimics some of the things we do with, we talk about our elbow partner or our small group, our table discussions that we really can't really have now. Even if we are in the same room, we kind of can't be close to each other talking that way. So the breakout room allows you can do this on the fly in Zoom, or you can do it here because you know your students are going to be in attendance. You can do a pre-assigned room if you want, and you can create rooms. You can import rooms here. You can create rooms here just using that little plus sign there, and breakout room 1. And you can actually, you can create as many as you want here, and you can add participation. You can even change the name. So if maybe if I have color groups. We always have the red, the blue, and when you're teaching kindergarten, red group, blue group. And then you can add your participants manually, or you can actually import them from your comma separated file, your Excel spreadsheet. So this will allow you to be able to break your students up in an easy group. So when you click to send them to a breakout room, it sends all those students to those pre-assigned groups, and they can talk amongst each other. And so if you see in this particular one here, you can create up to 50 breakout rooms and assign it to a total of 200 participants. Now, you're not going to have a classroom that's going to have that many people in there. So your groups are going to have 3 or 4, 5 students in them, which is a really good group number. And you can actually move between the groups. So you can actually move in, as they're talking, you can move in and talk and listen and to respond within the groups. If you have assistants, you can make them co-hosts. If you have a teaching assistant or you have a collaborative teacher, you can make them a co-host in your Zoom meeting, and they can also pop between the groups. So it makes supervision a little easier in that respect. All right, I'm gonna not do that one. You can have it automatically record the meeting for you, so you don't have to worry about remembering to turn that record switch on. But it starts recording from the moment that you open the meeting. So you may have a few minutes of you getting ready, and certainly you can go in and edit that later. But for me, I always like to wait till I'm ready, till I have my students in and we're ready to go before I start recording. But if you like this have that automatically recorded, you can click there and it'll do that. If you have, like I said before, you have collaborative teachers, teaching assistants, all of that, or anyone else that you want to have alternative hosts, or if you're having a guest speaker come and you want to give them hosting rights, you can do that by their email. So you can send an email to them, and it will create them they'll come in as a co-host for your webinar. So I can hit save, and I have my class meeting here, and I can start this meeting. When I click on it, I can just go over here and hit the blue start the meeting, or I can go ahead and copy the invitation, and it'll tell me when this class meeting is set to occur, how many weeks it's set to occur, and then how to join here with all of that. And because I included both audio, it gives me both the phone number and the Zoom meeting. Now, if I'm going to share this in Google Classroom, I'm just going to get that link there, and I'm going to create a Google Classroom post with that information in it. So really super easy. Now, the really cool thing again about Zoom as well is it gives you ability to record, and it's not just some really exciting things that I've just been using Zoom for. You don't just get just the video recording. So, for instance, let's see this one here. So this one gives me 3 files here on my fall class webinar. So I can click here on those 3 files, and I have the video. I can actually download. I can get a shareable link, so I don't have to. If you have enough storage in your Zoom account, and they with paid accounts you have the storage. Otherwise, it'll just download on your computer, which is no problem either. You can still share that through YouTube or through your school's LMS. But the cool thing here, I can get a shareable link directly and share that out with my students directly in Zoom, so I don't have to do any additional downloading, uploading, anything like that. It's already there. But you'll see I also get the shared screen with speaker view, and it will show you the actual screen. Some of my students get so caught up in it because they see the chat going, they'll start to click on the chat, even though it's a video that they're watching, they'll start clicking on the chat to be able to add notes or to add their own meeting. So it's really an interesting kind of dynamic to watch this in live, watch this recording. Many of my students talk about how they felt like they're in a live meeting, even though it's recorded. And so they only stop themselves when they try to participate in the chat. But you can get the audio file only. So if you have students maybe who are needing or on the go, they can actually download the audio file only and listen to the webinar, listening to the class meeting by audio. But they can also pull it by the chat file. So if there are links that you shared and they want to get a hold of that, you can actually download that and send them a copy of that chat file, which will have links and any live information in that that they can use. So it's an interesting. I think it's really an interesting thing to all the different things that you can do again with the recordings, and then looking over at reports. You can see your usage reports and your meeting reports. Now, if you do registration, you can actually get registration reports, and you can actually poll your registrants in there, and it will give you the feedback through the meeting reports. I usually use the usage reports in order to just determine participation rather. But the only issue here is that they only keep the usage reports for 1 month. So I don't think I actually have any that go back. Let's see for you to see. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I do have a few things here that we've done. So, but you could see who different things, the different ones we've done. I don't have any that have lots of attendees. You'll see here. Well, I had this one here that has quite a few. So I can look here at the participants here, click on this one here, and I can see who was at the meeting, how long they logged in, and if they were kicked out, it may show them listed several times if they got booted out by their internet connection or whatever. And then if I want to export this, I can actually click on export, and it's going to download a Excel file for me so that I can give my students the points for being there. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that so that you can quickly know who's in your session, and that way you can give points to your students for participation. And that's one of the things I always do. I always make sure that if they attend any live meetings, they get some sort of points for doing so, because I want to reward them for that, for their ability. You can go into your settings. There's some different settings that you can set up that are like default settings, so that you don't have to set these every time. Things like here, the waiting rooms. You can actually customize the waiting room here with a logo, so that when they're there, and it kind of gives them some information, so that they're not sitting there looking at a blank screen. And then you can require a passcode when new meetings are scheduled. Required, a passcode for instant meetings. So if you're sending out an instant meeting to someone, it requires a passcode for them. You can go in and require all these different things. You can embed, passcode in the link that you invite for people for one-click access. So if I send you a direct link, it's already in the passcode's already encrypted in there, so you don't need to enter it separately. Let's see. You can do things here about scheduling the meeting, the host video. Always start meetings with the host video on. Always start them with the participants video on. Those are things that you can do. Well, these are some of the things that we did per meeting. You can actually do this for a default. So all your meetings, if you have a preferred way of doing them, you can do all of those that way. There's a lot of things here. Again, in the meeting here, You can actually prevent students from saving the chat if they want to, if they can't do. You can allow private messages, or you can disallow. Now I allow private messages, mainly because as a host I can see all messages, but I will allow private messages to send to me. But for K-12 students, we may not want to enable that, so you can actually disable that as well. You can have it to auto save your chats or not. You can actually allow file transfer, so you can actually send them documents or send them any kind of, like if you have a template you want them to use, you can actually send that template through the chat window and do file transfer. If you don't want to enable that, maybe you are worried about students sharing something that's not they're not allowed to share. Here you can actually allow specific types, and you tell it what types. If you're going to allow a document or an image, you could exclude images if you didn't want to send pictures through the chat, or you can just do documents. And you can also tell it a maximum file size. So if you are worried about bandwidth, or you're worried about slowing down your connection, you can actually do a maximum file size. Let's see here. Here's where you can enable co-hosts. So in the same meeting, a co-host has the same in-meeting controls as the host. So that is helpful. So especially if you have a waiting room, or if you have, other features, or having someone field questions. A lot of times I have a standing webinar that I do with, it's actually not really a webinar, it's a Zoom meeting that we do with our classroom behavior management students. And the first one we do separately, each class does their own. And then the last one we kind of pull classes together because we have a guest speaker that night. And so in that night, I enable a couple of different people in there that are visiting, or panelists, or other instructors in teaching other sections. They're all enabled as co-hosts so that they can field questions, they can answer with links, or they can provide background and feedback to students as the speakers are speaking. So it makes it for a nice, really kind of robust experience. You can add polls to the meeting controls, so that way you can actually survey your attendees, ask a quick question and they can give feedback through surveys. There's lots of different things you can do. You can always show that bar. I don't allow it to do. I allow it pretty much to do whatever the app shows them to do. Let's see. You can designate who can share their screen. So if you're doing a large group activity, I typically only have the host that can share their screen. If I'm doing small groups, you can enable that to all participants can share. And so what happens is, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? The host only. But if I change it to participants can share, then we can have other students that can share their screen also. And I love this feature when we're working in small group or one-on-one, because it allows me to be able to look at a student's screen, especially if they say, I can't get this to work. I've read the directions, I just don't understand it, and I can't get it to upload, or I can't get this to work. And then so it's so much easier to say, okay, let's look at your screen. Can you share your screen with me? And let's see what you're doing. And can they kind of walk through those steps so that you can kind of see from the student's perspective and on their device what it is they're doing. That way you can help them provide that support that they need. But the default, I typically leave the default to host only, because within Zoom you can actually designate the sharing capability per student. So if there's a student who says, I've got this great thing I want to share, and you can designate that student to do that rather than everyone. Because if you do that for everyone, everybody says, oh, look, I've got a new button, and they all click on it, and then they all start sharing your screen over top of what you're trying to show them. So there's good and bad things with all these different features. So just thinking about what you want to do in a Zoom meeting is really important to understand why, who should be able to share and what type of meeting it is really. Let's see, you can actually disable the desktop or screen share in a meeting and only allow sharing of selected applications. So you can actually keep them from sharing their complete desktop and only share like their Google Slides presentation, that kind of thing. You can allow annotation, the annotation tools, and I'm going to show you that here in just a second. And then who can share? Only the user who is sharing can annotate, or you can allow others to annotate over top of the screen. Again, the whiteboard here, there's a whiteboard feature that we're going to talk about and look at. So there's all these different things here we can look at here. Who's going to have, how is it saved? Can we save it as a PDF or a PNG file so that students can download it later? Again, remote control during the sharing. The person who's sharing can't allow others to control the shared screen. So you can actually allow remote control of your screen. And I do that when I'm doing small group, especially if I need to show them something or I need to say, hey, let me take control here so I can show you where that is. That kind of thing. You can actually enable the nonverbal feedback, and I'll enable that now so you guys can see that. And so that will allow some things like, gestures, thumbs up and things like that. And you can have the meeting reactions. Again, there's little emojis that will hold there, and after 10 seconds, it'll go away. You can allow removed participants to rejoin. So if you've removed someone, I have it set to where they can't rejoin. So if someone's trying to get into your Zoom meeting, they're not supposed to be there, they won't be allowed to come back in. Allow students to rename themselves. I do that because of sometimes their settings do not show me their names, so I require them to rename themselves if they don't automatically see their name on there. Again, you can hear report to Zoom, so you can have meeting reports. And this one right here is breakout rooms. How to split participants. Allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. So you can enable that. That's enabled so that you can do it ahead of time, but you can also do it within the session as well on the fly. I need to actually have the closed captioning turned on, so that right there allows you to type closed captions or assign a person or a device to add closed captionings if you have that. And then you can actually have it saved in captions. And then the far end camera control. This one makes me a little nervous. I haven't seen a really well used a way of using it, but it allows another user to take control of your camera during a meeting. And both users, the one requesting control and the one giving control, must have this option turned on. So you both have to have it both enabled for it to work. So it's not something that can just easily just happen. But I've really not seen a really fantastic use of it. So that's something I'm still kind of working on figuring out how that works. This is the virtual backgrounds. Now, virtual backgrounds are Zoom probably has the best I've seen as far as it not being blocky and kind of having that white halo around you, But I always keep this turned on because this is when I mentioned before about students turning their cameras on. If you enable that virtual background and allow them to put a background behind them, sometimes that will alleviate some of that worry about being in a messy environment, so that can be helpful. Now, what's really cool about it is virtual backgrounds can be static images, can be default images that are provided by Zoom, or they can be videos as well that are there. And you can add your own custom ones. So there's lots and lots of different ones here. Now this one is a little insider thing about the video filters. I always enable this. You can actually have a filter, like right now, my skin is not this clear. It is the video filter that is turned on my camera. So it is enabled to filter out, and it's just smooths things a little bit so that if you're not camera perfect, or if you don't have a makeup artist here at home or at school, you can have that filter that kind of just takes the rough edges off. I guess that's the way to put that. There's tons and tons and tons of other things that you can enable. You can things about email notifications, let them know when your recording is available, send a copy to the person who scheduled it, send it to, you can have it, when you get when people are waiting on you in a meeting, you can have that enabled, notify everyone when the meeting's been canceled, those kinds of things. So there's all sorts of different things that you can use that are just fantastic, other fantastic things that you can do that in your settings that will save you time when you're setting up a new meeting. All right, I'm going to go into, I'm trying to think if I can do this or not. I'm going to see if I can, we're going to see if we can zoom in a Zoom. Okay, we'll try this out. So I'm going to actually, let's see. Oh, there's my meeting here. So I'm going to start this meeting and see. Hopefully, Nikki, we don't break. Okay, no, I can't do that. So it's not going to let me join two at a time. So sorry, I can't do that. But what I can do, is I'm gonna just go through some quickly. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this, because you guys are in participants mode. Can I? Okay, so it's a little bit different because I'm in the webinar feature, so there's a few things I can't show you right now. But I'm gonna flip back to my screen share to show you some screenshots of things. That way it'll make it a little bit clearer. So we're talking about back to teaching with Zoom. And again, there's all sorts of different ways you can use Zoom. But I love this guy, Carl Hooker, MrHooker.com. He's a fantastic user of Zoom, and has found out, has kind of used all these different cool ways you can use Zoom with your class, with your students, and some different settings and things that you can use with your students. So let me see. So one of the things that we mentioned here is, sharing your screen. So again, when you share your screen, you're not just able to just share just one, your whole desktop. You can share just an app, just an application window, or you can share the whole thing. It's up to you, however you want to share that. And then you can also share you can also use it as a whiteboard. So there's actually a whiteboard feature that is built in. I'm trying to find. Again, we're in a little bit different mode here, but the whiteboard feature is in the same as with the share. It'll actually share a whiteboard, and then you can annotate that. So we give you the ability to annotate, draw things over top of, add text. You can undo, redo things. You can spotlight things. For instance, let me get my spotlight here. So I can, it includes my name in the spotlight. I can use a little beacon here, and it actually clicks on the link there. I'm going to go back here. But you see the little beacon turns my finger, so you can actually see what I'm clicking at. If I'm pointing out a word or I'm pointing out something on the screen, you can see that it's different than the standard mouse. I can actually use stamps. So there's things I can just stamp, and to draw attention to. I can do drawing. I can do freehand drawing. I can do a little bit thicker kind of pencil type drawing. I can draw shapes as well. There's all sorts of things you can do. I can select things. I can change my colors so that I can have different colors of things. Again, I can change my font. I can change. There's so many things you can do. You can change the size of your fonts, and then if you want to save that, if you want to save the annotation, it will actually, you can hit save, and it will download a screenshot, and it'll show in your drawings, and you can actually enable other students to be able to annotate these things. So if I want to, let's see, click on I can clear the board, clear all drawings here in one easy swoop. So if you don't have the ability, you don't have to sit there and click through everything, or you don't have to advance to make that clear. So it just will take that right off. All right, so you can annotate. Again, I talked about breakout rooms, and again, using breakout rooms for study rooms, for group discussions, small group discussions, for sharing in small group, and the fact that you can go between the groups, because if we were in a regular Zoom meeting, I could show you it's just a little button at the bottom of your screen that says breakout rooms, and you can click there, and it will allow you to choose which one you want to go to. It'll also allow you to assign people to those rooms on the fly. So if, say, you have assigned your class, but maybe you have a guest speaker, or you have a additional people in class that day that you are anticipating who were virtual, you can add them in those groups as well. So it makes it really, really easy to do that. You can do the virtual backgrounds, and the virtual backgrounds are really neat. I love those, and those are found right at the bottom of your screen, right where the camera icon. There's a little arrow. So if you look at the little arrow, you have some options here about choosing which camera do you want to use, and the video settings. In the video settings is where you can also do those touch-ups, enable allow that, so you can actually see things like mirroring your video. If I don't have that. So see how it wasn't magic, but if I have writing or something in my background, then I may have to mirror it to be able to for you to see that correctly. I can untouch up my presence, and you see, hideous, and then I touch it up, and just a little bit of a filter there. Let's see. You can always display participants' name on their video, which I love to do. That way I can see who's there, because sometimes the lighting's not always so great that you can see everybody completely all the time. And then I can also choose that virtual background. And so you can really, I think about teachers, how we really are looking to ways to engage our students. And one of the easiest ways is to, and sorry if I'm going to get seasick, one of the easiest ways is with virtual backgrounds, because when they log in each day, they're going to figure out what is my teacher doing today. What's Miss Askea doing today? What adventure are we going on in this virtual classroom? It's not just a meeting. This is your classroom. So we want to make sure that we are, as lively and as animated and as wonderful as you are in the classroom. We want to make sure that your online meetings are just as wonderful. So if maybe we're talking about aquariums, maybe we're talking about fish, we're talking about the ocean. What better way than doing that? But I can't see those fish, but you guys can. Is talking about the fish here in the aquarium, and we can all just go out. This is a one where we used this past summer. This is where that mirroring of your mirror. If you have a something written on your screen, so this is one of the reasons that you can do the mirroring or not mirror your video, because that way you can see the words correctly. I see them backwards. You guys will see them correctly. You can even do cartoon backgrounds. If anybody who's a Bob's Burger fan, this is Bob's Burger Restaurant. Or you can get really fancy. We can get really. This is not what my home looks like, but I can, we can pretend that it does. But again, it allows you again to just add another element of interest. So, and it also can for this, this, if I'm in a messy environment, or if I'm in a chaotic environment, I can, this is one of those beautiful things about working from home. My daughter's bathroom is on the other side of this wall, so I'm distracted by the bathroom, by the shower just turned on. So I apologize. But that's part of it. That's the part that Zoom helps with. That you can do all sorts of things to kind of help your students be connected and be together. And virtual backgrounds can be one of the ways you do that. And you can see that without a green screen, the virtual backgrounds, you can see a few times where when I'm moving, especially if I'm trying to do movement, it does take a little while. You can see where they're, but if I'm pretty much stable or in one place, the virtual backgrounds work really well, especially with these animated ones. So let me go back to my shared screen. And then thinking about using using an I Spy game. So if your students don't have virtual backgrounds enabled, you can actually have them look for things in the background. So it's ways for them to connect with each other. To I Spy, you can say I spy with my little eye, something that you can read, and oh, I've got a book on my bookshelf behind me, that kind of thing. You can have scavenger hunts where if you don't want students to be sitting in front of a computer the whole time and you want to let them get up and move a little bit, you can have scavenger hunts. And Mr. Hooker mentions that with scavenger hunts, you don't want to have a specific item in mind. You may want to have something that you may want to send students to the house or through their apartments and say, I'm looking for something that has a number on it. And then they go off and they come back and bring an item that has a number on it. So again, you can do some critical thinking type things. You can do some, engaging them in movement to try to get them, kind of moving. If they have manipulatives, you can actually have them do some work with their manipulatives along with you. Um, Trivia game. Now I had more fun. I actually attended one of Mr. Hooker's trivia nights. He did a spooky trivia night for NetRef a couple weeks ago, and it was so fun. We used a technology called CrowdPurr that did trivia questions, and everybody can kind of. But you can do that with your Kahoots, things you already have. You don't have to go out and invent something or create something new. If you're using Kahoot or Quiziz or Quizlet or any of those types of gaming type platforms that are you're already engaging students with that, you can actually host those live on your Zoom call, on your Zoom room webinar. So your students are seeing you, they're hearing you, they may be hearing music in the background even, but it makes it fun, it makes it engaging, it makes students want to participate. So you can have that trivia game where they're competing for points or whatever. You can also send them surveys and polls through Zoom and ask them questions, and they can actually vote for things, yes or no, or hands up or down, thumbs up, thumbs up, down, thumbs down rather. Um, you can have them use the whiteboard again, whiteboard feature for brainstorming. You can actually send them into breakout rooms for brainstorming sessions. So there's lots of really cool things you can do there. You can do interactive presentations because remember, you can enable your students to share their screens, so they can actually share their screen, go through their presentation, and other students can comment. You can comment and give feedback as well. And then, there's lots of things that we can do at brain breaks. One of the things I love is I love a good Go Noodle video. So you can find some fun brain breaks where students can get up out of their seats, they can move around, they can be silly together, but they're all on camera. So it's kind of like you do in the classroom where you have a moment of transition or you have a moment of pause, and you really give them time to have a moment to think, to reflect. I missed one there about embracing the pause. I had a teacher many moons ago when I took a class, an AP class remotely, and remote teaching looked very different when I was in the classroom versus how it does today. So she always had these things that she put on the screen. It was called a think screen. It was a little owl, it was a little piece of paper that had an owl on it, and she would put it up on the camera, and we would have a moment where we all had to think about something. And typically that was the time she was transitioning and getting materials ready for the next section, but we were always thinking about what the question she left us with. So embracing the ability to do the pauses, those are something that's kind of really neat to have a pause. We're going to think about this. You could play some music. You could play that Jeopardy theme, that you have in the background. Those types of things. Something to kind of give them the cue that we're going to talk. We're going to think for a few minutes. We're going to think for a few seconds, and then we're going to answer thoughtfully. Again, you can do the reveal your answer. Now, this is a cool idea where students are working out problems on paper or on their own whiteboard at home, and you can give the problem, the question, they work it out, and then all of a sudden you can say, okay, reveal, and everybody holds up their answer at the camera at the same time. So we don't, again, it's revealing your answer. So everybody's working together. There's nobody that's in the front of the room leading the classroom. It's everybody's working the problem together, and they're all sharing at the same time. So it's a cool way to engage everybody at the same. I'm going to encourage you to go and look at the box of lies. That's a kind of a neat little thing. If you're a fan of Jimmy Fallon and Tonight Show, you probably already know what the box of lies is, but I'm going to let you explore that because you need to watch the video that kind of explains what it is. But it's kind of a game that you can have with students where they can ask questions, something that's off camera, they can tell you about it, and you have to decide whether it's a lie or not. Monster drawing, you can have students draw, and then they have to describe their drawings to each other. You can help organize projects. Again, that breakout rooms are great for putting students in groups and doing that collaboration and being able to organize projects together. There's so many other things here. Again, you can see here all these different ones here about hosting game shows and digital flashcards. There's tons of things here, and the link, I'm going to send this link out so that Penny can share it with you guys as well, because it's just a fantastic set of resources. Now you've got all these different ideas, but how do we bring them together? How do we make sure that we're feeling solid about getting started with our classroom in Zoom? So there's 4 different sections I give you here, 4 different resources, and the getting started with the classroom. This is just a document. Sometimes I love having a document that has images because I can see exactly what. If you haven't signed up for it, this is brand new getting started with the Google Education, or sorry, not Google Education, Zoom Education rather. So if you haven't already got an account, then you can sign up for that account through Zoom. If your school has Zoom accounts for you, then check with your IT department first before you sign up for one, because they may have purchased a license, a district license that gives you a whole lot more features, and it also helps you with integration of your students into Zoom. So if not, then this you can sign up for a free one. Now the free one will enable you to have up to 40 minutes of recorded video. And I think it's a 40-minute meeting. So if you don't use more than 30 minutes or 40 minutes of a video or of meeting time, then the free one may be perfect for you. You have a lot of the same features. I don't believe you have breakout rooms, but I think you do have some of the same polling features in there. So it's really, I mean, I've been in the free one, I've been in the regular, in my paid premium version, and there's not a lot of difference other than just the time and the allowances for storage. It gives you all sorts of different information here about how to do all these things and what it looks like through the desktop app versus an iPad or those types of things. Gives you some best practices here. Gives you ways to get to their help center. So there's all sorts of information there. Then I give you tips and tricks for educators. This is one that gives you some of the things, some of the same ideas I was talking about, and then a few more here about what to do, how to present yourselves, how to, some just best practice type things that we just need to kind of keep in mind to have students that others have done it. And then here's some fantastic additional links here. So if you're curious about polling questions, if you're curious about those breakout rooms, the nonverbal feedback options, any of those things we talked about and more here, you can click on a separate link and it will take you to specific information on that top that in there as well. You can also do here, the OutSchool has some great things here that there's some things for Zoom webinars there as well. And then again, you have Harvard's in-depth guide and the teacher's guide to Zoom. Those are basically, both of those come from Harvard, and these are guides they built for their teachers. But they also have some really good additional pieces, good links. And I love that they're broken down into smaller pieces, so you get step-by-step guides and with some images as well. So if you have any questions, I'm going to send this back to, I'm going to send a copy of this to Penny so that she can share with you all. And I really thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Zoom is a really versatile, easy to manage. You can do it with other apps. So one of the other things I would suggest you look at is if you're a Nearpod user, for instance, you can actually run a Nearpod live session at the same time, so students can actually work on their iPads or they can work on the desktop and actually listen to you in one screen and participate with lots of different options in the Nearpod session in another screen. So it's a little more advanced skill, but it's a neat dynamic just to be able to have students, everybody participating together. So they're not just sitting there listening. You don't have those screens where you think, oh, did that child, are they asleep? No, you're going to have them actively participating the whole time. So there's lots and lots of ideas. Check out the resources. If you have any questions, I don't care a bit to help or field any questions. I'm a Zoom user, pretty much every day of the week. I'm on Zoom in some fashion. So if I can't find the answer, I'll find somebody who can find the answer for you. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate Penny McCallum and Virginia Tech Southwest Center and Nikki and the Higher Ed Center for hosting this event. And I appreciate just being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. You're always awesome. And we appreciate you so much. And I'm sure I'm going to be calling on you again.
That'd be fine. I'd be happy to.